Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in for this virtual roundtable on fall protection. I'm Marcel Vanderweer. I'm the editor of OHS Canada, Canada's occupational health and safety magazine. I'm pleased to be joined today by Ryan West, Territory Sales Manager for Pure Safety Group in Mississauga, Ontario. Thanks for joining us, Ryan.
Thank you.
I'm also happy to have Patrick Lawler join us. Patrick is President and General Manager of Lawler Safety in Hamilton, Ontario.
Thanks.
And our third panelist is Rick Tunks. Rick is the Safety Program Manager at Brafasco in St. Catharines, Ontario.
Hi, thanks, Marcel.
This roundtable will touch on various aspects of fall protection, including Csa Standards, compliance, and leading edge. We will also discuss dropped objects, confined space safety, product innovation, and maintenance. I will be moderating the discussion, and I'm looking forward to this comprehensive review of fall protection from our three experts. Fall protection remains an important safety issue in Canadian workplaces. According to the latest research, of 1,027 workplace deaths in Canada in 2018, 66 were a result of falls. And of 264,000 lost time claims in that same year, 51,800 of them were due to injuries incurred from a fall, making it the third highest category in Canada. There's no question that fall protection remains a very important part of workplace safety. That said, let's hear from our panelists, and let's begin with the latest in Csa Standards. Ryan, why don't we begin with you?
Yeah.
What are the latest Csa Standards that fall protection users should be aware of? For example, are there new regulatory requirements for workers at height?
Yeah, so probably the latest buzz here in Ontario for myself is the new standard on lanyards. There's a new energy absorbing standard that came out in February, which kind of shook up the market a little bit. Traditionally, it was two different weight recommendations on an energy absorber, E4 and an E6 is what they were classified as. But Csa has changed the standard around a little bit to accommodate more accuracy in the weight restrictions on those lanyards. The testing has changed on them as well. So it kind of shook up from a manufacturing side of things. It kind of shook up what we were traditionally manufacturing as far as weight recommendations on lanyards. We've had to streamline that a little bit and go back to the drawing board a little bit with the new testing to make all of the new regulations that they state in that standard. So I'm talking a lot about that right now. There's a lot of discussion around that. Different manufacturers are coming to the market with different things. So, you know, we're just trying to get out there and inform customers the best we can and let them know that, you know, we're covered when it comes to the regulation. So I would say that's the latest, yeah, right now. That's the buzz right now that I'm talking about anyways. So
yeah. We're seeing a lot of confusion still about self-retracting devices. The CSA Z259.2.2.17, just where you use which SRL or SRD in which particular application tends to be a real confusing point for consumers right now.
Okay. Yeah, they've been reclassified, and with the self-retracting devices, you've got four classifications now. You know, basically, if you're using one vertically, I don't know if Ryan's got one handy there that he could hold up, but what we're talking about.
I've got one of our new leading edge units that are here. Not so sure it's got the right classification on that. It's just a sample here, but what is it exactly that you wanted me to refer to there, Rick?
Yeah, so the self-retracting devices, they come in many different lengths. That particular one's what they call like a personal one that would go in your back. 8 foot.
Class B.
Yeah, so the SRLs that are meant to be used vertically, that's one class, and then you have ones that are SRL leading edge. So if you have an opportunity to hit a sharp edge and you're attaching below your back dorsal D-ring, then it's mandated that you're using leading edge device. Kind of referring to what Patrick's talking about, right? So you're trying to walk your customers through what's the best solution, and then you have ones that are classified as SRL rescue devices. And in the past, we were using type 1, type 2, and type 3. So, and then the fourth one is a combination of leading edge and retrievable. So there's 4 classifications. And then mixed in there, they reclassified, when I had said previous it was type 1, type 2, and type 3. That was regarding the inspection requirements in the past. And so now they've reclassified it into 3 classifications basically, and leaving it up to the company to come up with how they want to classify these devices themselves. So it's the competent person within the company. Is it infrequent to light use, which would mean, it's inside all the time, moderate to heavy. It's talking about revalidation every 2 years. And if it's a harsh condition, most construction sites are going to be considered harsh. It's going to be a recertification or revalidation of annually. So those are the main changes with the self-retractors.
Yeah, one of the things too that I recommend to my customers when you're talking recertifications is obviously documentation. Document when you're putting your SRLs into use. Document them, on their inspections, because when it comes to leaving it up to that competent person, I mean that could vary from person to person on what they consider light duty, heavy duty, moderate duty. So one thing is that, make sure that you're documenting it, make sure that you're keeping track of the units that you have out in the field so that you can better understand when you need to recertify them.
Great responses, guys. Patrick, I'll turn to you for the next question. How much of a role does improper usage of equipment continue to play in workplace incidents?
It's significant. Going back to the SRD scenario, we still have concrete formers and construction application users where they don't even know the existence of the new leading edge standard and are continuing to use a product that is not maintained and doesn't meet the leading edge standard in leading edge applications. We do our best to educate the consumer, and there is a little bit of resistance to moving to the new product. But once again, we do our best to educate them wherever we can.
Yeah, they continue, just to follow up on Patrick's point. The first one was classified as, you have to have it anchored above you. And to Patrick's point, they're using something that's supposed to be anchored above, below their back D-ring, and using it horizontally, which is completely incorrect, right? So it's a challenge. And, I do the working at heights training in Ontario and a couple of other provinces. And, stuff I see in the class just blows my mind. And these sometimes even people that have taken the course already and in the refresher that they learned already and still forget. I'll give you one funny example. There's anchor connectors that various manufacturers make, and this one particular one actually was Ryan's, where it's a plate that has 4 anchor points on a plate, and right in the center of the plate it said meant for 1 person for fall arrest and 2 people maximum for restraint. And when I started talking about this anchor, and one gentleman stood up and he said, "Rick, that's a great piece of equipment. Man, I had 4 guys on that all day long." And I said,
"Oh no."
So just things like that, blows my mind and continues to make me shrug my shoulders.
Yeah, to follow up on Rick's point too, I think from a manufacturing standpoint, we can put features and benefits into all kinds of products to make it user friendly and make it more safe for the user. But if they're not installing it properly, if they're not following the instructions that we put with our products, it's not going to do any good. So accidents are still going to happen that way. So training is by far at the forefront of what we try to do as well. So getting us involved in workers training, getting guys like Patrick and Rick involved in training your end users to help educate the guys that are using it is very important.
I can't count the number of times that in a day when we have to say to the customer, the end user, read the manual, and how many times we have to resend the manual out to customers. It's incredible.
And then just to finish that off, like a part of the working at heights training is about manufacturing operating manual, and they preach it all the way through the course. So if you're not reading the manual, you've lost, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Rick, how can users best stay up to date on changing regulations and training?
You know, companies like Patrick's company and my company and the various vendors that we're connected with, you know, we always get updates, what's changing, what's coming down the pipe, and we always want to be like passing that value on to our customers. There's also associations like the IHSA in Ontario and various other associations across the country in each province that do a pretty good job of updating on their websites and so on. So I would stay in tune with that and partner with a good value distributor and supplier that's going to be, you know, looking after your back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for us, we our website has a wonderful resource tab that we update. We have articles, blogs that go up on our website that are good resources for keeping up to date on new regulations. We're all over social media, so make sure you follow PSG on social media. And then, of course, we actually have a podcast as well, where we have various guests on there that talk about the latest trends and new regulations and things that are coming out. So lots of resources that we put out there for our customers. And then, of course, myself, I'm a resource too. So if you have questions, you can always call me. And if I don't have the answer, I'll find the answer.
Thanks so much, guys. Why don't we shift focus and actually discuss more specifics on leading edge and sharp edge in different work sites. And maybe we'll begin with you, Patrick.
Yeah.
What specific dangers should users be aware of in terms of leading edge or sharp edge?
The standard addresses a lot of the major issues, being the stress put on the worker, the stress being put on the equipment. One thing I always go back to customers on is the fall clearance. Leading edge equipment is going to add another shock absorber between the user and the SRD device, so that can add up to 47 inches of fall clearance that the customer needs to be aware of and make sure they're not hitting any sort of an object or structure below them when they're working.
Yeah, and even the calculations for the various manufacturers on the leading edge, it's not cut and dry, it's very complicated. It talks about how far it's set back. All these things further complicate calculations and so on. What I find is that people use them improperly. So I mentioned about using it horizontally, which is the way it's typically used. And you want to try and keep it within a radius, a reasonable radius, 15 degrees off one side, 15 degrees off the other side. And what we're finding is on the longer ones, let's just take a flat roof, for example, the person is walking way out to the corner, you know, paying out, say, 60 feet, and they're only at a 30-foot height level, and they fall. So two things happen is that cable's coming across the edge, and or they're hitting the ground, right? Because they just paid out way too much cable based on where they're standing. So again, going back to the manual, working with the manufacturer to understand the limitations of the device. And you know,
yeah, not to mention the swing factor in that too. If they're walking way out and they're anchored back 30 feet, then they're going to have a swing factor if they do fall as well, right? So you got to take that into account as well. I'm finding that most customers don't even know what a leading edge application is. And so, you know, I'm having to educate them on, you know, to simplify kind of what it is what a leading edge application is. So, you know, first is that education point and letting them know, you know, a leading edge application is anywhere where there's a risk of a fall and your lifeline hitting the edge that you're working on. That's simplified. I know that's not the true definition of it, but it kind of simplifies it for them, and they're able to use that and go, okay, well, you know what, we do have a risk here of potentially having a fall and the lifeline hitting that edge. So educating them, and then of course, you know, making sure that the fall clearance is correct, like these guys both said, and all those things. So a lot of factors go into it, and it's a lot of unknown. There's a huge education portion to it with end users right now. So
yeah, and then sorry, just to add a little bit to that. So you know, we've been told as sellers from the various manufacturers that it's the minute that you're tying off below your back doing, sharp edge or not, forcing it that it's got to be a leading edge device.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Sure. Ryan, I want to follow up on what you've been saying, and I'm just curious too, what is the most current information a worker should be aware of on SRLs?
Latest information, what I'm finding is that, and I don't know if this is more information or it's more like trending towards this way. I'm finding a lot of companies are making the investment in SRLs over a traditional lanyard. The safety features that are going into SRLs that we're building into our own SRLs now far outweigh a traditional lanyard. So what I'm really doing is not that it's anything new, but a lot of customers who have been using traditional lanyards, you know, and want to get into the SRL space and want to know some of the features and benefits of doing it. And then once you go over all the safety features with them, it's just a matter of making that investment, because I mean, traditionally they are a little bit more expensive than buying a lanyard, but you know, the safety features that go into them far outweigh that price point, that price difference, right? So for me, I'm seeing a lot of customers that want to do that sort of swap out and get some SRLs into the field. They feel a lot safer. Safety managers feel a lot better when their workers are attached to an SRL as opposed to a traditional lanyard. And so for me, it's educating them on the safety features and benefits of an SRL over a lanyard. I'm not sure what these guys are seeing out there, but that's.
Yeah. Patrick, do you want to chime in on this?
Yeah, I do. I feel much more comfortable if I can put a customer into an SRD as opposed to a static lanyard anytime. Your fault clearance is going to be less. It addresses many of the safety concerns. But then back to many of Rick's points too, though, that they have to be using it properly and using it correctly.
Yeah, it's really a no-brainer. If you look at the one that Ryan was showing you, the 8-foot retractable there, and even there's lighter ones that are on the market. That particular one's a leading edge one, but it's really a no-brainer. Like Patrick said, it locks up quick, less clearance, and well, in some cases, unless it's leading edge, locks up quicker. It's just a much safer device. It makes sense.
Sure, and to follow up on that, Rick, like how can users ensure they're choosing the most appropriate gear for their work site? Is that, you mentioned it being a no-brainer? I'm just wondering how that information comes available.
If you want to talk about PPE in general, you know, you can loop in glasses, hard hats, basically any kind of a hazard. And when you're talking safety professionals, you know, they should be doing a really good hazard assessment basically to determine what the hazards are. And, you know, they use something called the hierarchy of controls. You know, the best PPE is kind of a last resort, right? Unfortunately, a lot of times that's the case. So if it is PPE and they've done a good hazard assessment and picked the right products, I mean, that's the key. And then making a plan around that hazard. And then once you've got the plan, to make sure that the workers are all trained to the hazard. So that's kind of the philosophy of picking, you know, identify the hazard. That's the main thing. Pick the right product to protect the worker and make sure that the worker's trained on those products.
Yeah, planning. Know your hazard, know what you're doing, know what the work you're going to perform is, and yeah, identify anything that can possibly happen and plan for the worst in a lot of situations.
I mean, and when we're talking specifically fall protection, you know, by law, they need to have a rescue plan in place as well. So when you start to talk about training and planning, a rescue plan needs to be documented by law now. So it's important to make sure you're prepared for that.
Yeah, I'll finish off by saying, during the trainings at least in Ontario and most of the provinces, that's the fourth component of any fall system, and there's a whole chapter on it. And you know, I've been doing this for about 5 years. We go back to some of our customers, not all, but some of our customers, and ask them, hey, have you addressed your rescue? And in a lot of cases, not yet. So you know, we try to educate and say, hey, let's bring in some ideas of a simple rescue that can be done.
I'll give you an example. For the city of Toronto, there's only a select few fire stations that have the rescue equipment to rescue somebody from at heights. So if you're working on the opposite end of one of those fire stations where you're required to get them in, and it's part of your rescue plan that you call them, it's going to be rather difficult if you're on the opposite side for them to get there in a timely manner, especially in a city like Toronto in traffic. And so you got to make sure you accommodate for that, and it's in your rescue plan.
Yeah, I always shudder when someone's rescue plan includes call 911. That just, no.
Yeah, they're there to assist, right?
Not as simple as that, right?
Great responses, guys. I want to move on to another factor that workers need to be aware of within fall protection, and that's dropped objects. And I'd like to get your opinion on this as well. And so I'll turn to Ryan again to start. How significant an issue are dropped objects when it comes to fall protection?
It's a huge significant issue, actually. It's a little weird for me in Ontario here. It's one of those topics of discussion that I have on a regular basis, but it's not something that's been fully implemented by a lot of companies either. There's certain companies that, if you take a construction site, for instance, they mandate that your tools need to be tied off while you're on site. It's part of the policy, it's part of the plan. And then there's other sites that don't have a policy at all, but would like to write a policy and would like to get introduced to it. So it's certainly prevalent out there. It's just, again, I go back to that education piece. It's a bit of educating people on it, because there's no specific standard written right now to tie off your tools. A lot of people are kind of just going by what they've heard. They're going by what they've read about, doing some research and trying to develop their own policy for it. But right now here in Ontario, it's a mixed feedback, mixed reaction to it. So
yeah, I think it depends. Sorry, Patrick.
Oh, go ahead.
If a lot of it's being driven by the large general contractors that are mandating that if you're going to work on our site, then your tools are going to be tethered, especially in the downtown cores and these sorts of things. Just going back to your point about how significant it is, it's almost catching up to fall fatalities. So roughly 30 plus every year. Fatalities due to dropped objects, and 27,000 injuries. So I mean, it's very, very significant, and this is another no-brainer to me. It really is.
We've encountered a lot of situations where the general on site has a tied tool policy, but there's no enforcement being done with the subtrades. It's almost like they're trying to cover themselves without sort of putting any backing behind it. With the number of new solutions too, you can find an attachment point for any type of tool. There's no excuse not to have your tools tied off.
Ryan, do you have any tethers there that you can just kind of hold up just to?
Yeah, I've got a few. This is an example of a hard hat tether, but this is a bungee style tether. It would just attach into where your earmuffs might attach to in a hard hat, and then you tether it off on the other side. One of the ones that we sell a lot of are just your loose D-ring tethers like this that come with weight restrictions on them, although the instructions there. And then you would combine that with some of our wrap tape, our fall tape there. Mainly that's a more popular item because if they're required, like Rick said, most GCs are requiring you to tie off. They don't want to, if they have to go to another job site where they don't, what I've heard from them is that they don't want to keep the tether on. If it's not required, they don't want it on their tool. So it's an easy way to you can cut the tape off and remove the tether if you don't want it on there permanently. So we have, semi-permanent, temporary, and permanent tethers that you can purchase depending on what you need there. So.
Yeah, I was curious to hearing a little bit more about some of the latest gear in terms of dropped objects. So you've shared, Ryan. Rick or Patrick, is there anything else that you would maybe recommend at this point for users?
There's so many different types of tethers. What we recommend is bringing a vendor in, understanding what tools are being used, and just go through what's the best fit for their group, and then train them on how to use it.
Yeah.
I'll just finish off by saying a lot of these dropped objects aren't a result of a direct hit straight down. A lot of them come from deflections. So you have a wrench, for example, coming down and it hits a scaffold and it can deflect. We're talking many feet, right? And that's the issue.
Yeah, one of the things that I can do for customers is go on site and do a site audit for their tool program. So I'll go on, we'll take inventory of the tools that they're using at heights, and then we'll match up the necessary tethers to make sure that they're using the proper tether for the weight of the tool, for the type of tool, and we'll work through and develop that plan with the end user there. So it's a service that we do that I'm capable of doing. So that's kind of the starting point. If somebody's looking to put in a drop tools policy or a plan, we start with obviously taking inventory of what tools you're using, and then from there you match up the appropriate tether. But to Rick's point, there's a ton of options. We have a lot of options when it comes to it. So
sure. One last question I want to ask on this, and Ryan, you've mentioned that it's not always required by law per se, and Rick, you've mentioned it's a no-brainer, but I'm wondering what best practices you guys might recommend on this issue. Is it always tether off, only in specific situations? Just wondering.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with Rick. It's a no-brainer. Like he said, the most of the larger GCs are adopting a drop tool program, but that's a starting point, I guess. But everybody really should be tethering off their tools when they're working at heights. It's in my opinion, again, it's a no-brainer, like Rick said.
Yep. And it protects your tools. Who wants to wreck a brand new Makita impact drill, dropping it from up high? It just doesn't make sense not to tie that off.
And also
best
downtime.
Case scenario too. Best case scenario is it doesn't actually hit anybody if it does drop, but then you're still, think about the time that it takes for a person to go all the way to the bottom, grab their tool and go all the way back up. There's lost work time there too, right? So lots of factors involved.
The potential for falls can also be associated with confined space safety, which has many hazards on its own. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this as well. So potentially begin with Patrick. What role does fall protection play in confined space safety?
Entering and egress of confined space applications, a lot of them, people don't take into account the fall protection when they're going in and out. A lot of them are just worried about rescuing the person in case there's an incident. You'll see certain people and contractors using tools and equipment that doesn't take into account fall protection. And we always make sure to point out to customers that you need fall protection when you're going in and out. Whether you're being lowered in or whether you're using a ladder, you don't know what condition that gear is in, so you have to have a backup system set up. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to the hazard assessment,
yep.
What you need to be able to extract somebody if there's a danger of atmospheric change. There's also horizontal applications where not only you think of vertical going down, but there's also horizontal extractions where there's various equipment that can be used for rescue, right? So, but going back to that assessment, what do we need and what do we need to have on site all the time?
Yeah, I would 100% agree with these guys.
Sure. Ryan, I'll turn to you for the next question then. What's the best way to prepare for the unseen challenges in confined space safety? Is it that assessment?
Yeah, I think making sure, for one, that you do the hazard assessment like Rick and Patrick mentioned, and make sure that you have a rescue plan. Like I said, it's required. You're supposed to. So part of that planning and part of that hazard assessment is making sure that if there isn't an accident or a fall or an event that happens, that you have a proper rescue plan written out. So, and then training on that as well, because it's one thing to have it documented. It's another thing that when you're put into that position as a worker, you know, I don't know how anybody else would react, but I know if I was in a confined space and something happened, without training, I would be I'd be losing my mind. So, you know, you got to make sure that you're training your workers as well. Yeah, I think a combination of those three and you're good.
Maintaining your equipment too, we find is an important thing. A lot of the guys take the confined space equipment for granted, and it gets thrown in the back of the truck with the shovels and the other work gear instead of treated as a piece of safety equipment. We've had customers come back to us that said that they had to raise an employee out of a sewer situation, and the three-way SRL kept clicking whenever they turned the handle. And our question back was, when was the last time it was maintained? Oh, 6-7 years ago. Come on, get it revalidated, get it looked at. We'd open the unit up and see that the gears are stripped because it's been used so many times. This stuff is designed to be, when it's used to extract or take someone out of a confined space, it needs to be revalidated and inspected at that point.
Yeah.
So we really put a lot of value in that.
Rick, is there any specific gear that employers need to have on hand for these types of situations?
Yep, we're going back to that hazard assessment again. So, I mean, there's a zillion, there's lots of equipment, and it's based on the hazard. So you could have anything from, you know, obviously a tripod that's over, you know, a sewer, davit systems that are meant for, they're basically a boom that swings, where you could have a working winch on it to lower somebody and or extract somebody on a basket, backboard. These types of things. And, you know, based on the hazard assessment, I get a little chuckle inside, never chuckle in front of the customer, but, you know, they say, you know, I put my guys on gas monitors and, you know, we're okay. So my next question is, well, are you using, do you have a self-contained breathing apparatus? Maybe two. And their question is why? They've got gas monitors on. Well, if the atmosphere, that's fine. Their gas monitor goes off, but if they're a significant distance to get out, they could be overcome by whatever the noxious gas, for example, is. So then somebody needs to go in. So then that's where the self-contained breathing apparatus would come in, that the respirator would gear up, go in. And then I always say, do you have any redundancy built in there? Where's your second self-contained breathing apparatus? And they say, well, what do I need that for? Well, what happens if something happened to the first guy? What's going to happen then? So redundancy is important. And again, going back to what Ryan and Patrick have been saying, is it's all about training and planning and actually retraining, making sure that your skills are still relevant and good.
Sure. Ryan or Patrick, do you want to comment on the gear? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Patrick touched on a couple of things. The tripod system, same with Rick. Rick touched on tripod system, three-way SRL, self-retracting lifeline. One thing you want to keep in mind is that for hoisting and descending personnel into, you know, call it a manhole, you want to make sure you're using a winch as well, not using the three-way SRL, because if you throw that into retrieval mode, that's it's gonna be bad to lower somebody in or hoisting somebody up. So you want to make sure you have a backup winch when you're retrieving somebody, or equipment designed to ascend and descend a person.
Perfect.
Yeah, definitely. We see it all the time when people are using rescue designed equipment as to get in and out of confined spaces. It's a consistent problem we have.
All right. We've touched on a bit of the gear associated with fall protection already, and Ryan showed a few examples. I do want to delve into that a little further and discuss some of the latest innovations with you guys. Why don't we begin with Rick, and what are the latest innovations in fall protection equipment?
I mean, we've talked about it mainly is all of the various leading edge devices that all of the manufacturers are coming out with. Some are unique. We've even got one manufacturer that's not using cable, which is interesting. They're using a web design, and it is lighter, but for the most part, it's all cable, leading edge devices, which I feel comfortable with. And you know, all of them have different harnesses and soft goods coming out on the marketplace annually. So yeah, that comes to mind as the leading edge device, basically, is the big one.
Yeah, I mean, for us, sorry, go ahead, Patrick.
No, you go ahead, Ryan.
I was going to say, from us, you know, we're putting a lot of innovation into our SRLs. You know, smaller, lighter. One of the common feedbacks we get from workers who are wearing these things all day is that it's heavy. It's a lot, and you know, going through training, I wear it for maybe an hour, and you know, it is heavy. So you know, smaller, lighter. Our braking systems, our internal braking systems, are putting a lot of technology into those. Making sure that you know, really the mechanisms inside are you know, we're advancing the sort of the safety features on those. When it comes to soft goods like harnesses, you know, we're taking some feedback as well from users, and one of the common things that I get when it comes to harnesses is inspection. So you know, a competent person's inspecting a harness on an annual basis, and they're looking at it and going, well, you know, I'm seeing it humming and hawing whether or not, well, is this, you know, can I put this, can I approve this, can I put this back into use here? I don't know. Well, it's got this little fray here. So one of the things on our new series harnesses is we have some contrasted webbing. And so the contrasted webbing, when it starts to fray the harness, it actually frays a different color. The internal webbing is a different color. So upon inspection, looking at it, it's easy to inspect and know that it's time to take that harness out of service. And so little features and benefits like that we're doing to kind of help the end user determine on inspection. Because there's a lot of times, and Rick, I'm sure, and even Patrick, I'm sure you can attest to this. You go into the field and you take a look at somebody who's wearing a harness, and it's like, I'm not so sure that thing's going to hold up, right? And for some reason, it's passed inspection and they've approved it to be used, and this makes it a little bit more obvious when it starts to, you know, deteriorate.
We love a lot of the innovation in harnesses to make using the heavier weight leading edge SRLs more comfortable, whether it's dispersing the weight, better padding in the shoulders, chest strap that won't just slip down and the whole harness yank up around your throat. Different things like that we're finding that customers are really appreciating.
Yeah, which are all features that we're putting into our new series harnesses too. So captivated chest straps that allow that don't slip out of position. We have our SRL loop, webbing loop on the back that helps distribute the weight for SRLs, and also leaves the D-ring open for another connecting device. So little subtle features like that we're improving our harnesses.
Ryan, I'll turn right back to you. Where do you believe equipment is headed in terms of technology? What type of role is that playing?
So for us, what I'm seeing a lot of out there, and this is even prior to me, you know, this is just me being in the industry for a long time, is RFID tagging and things like that for tracking purposes. You know, a lot of the time you get onto job sites and there's various contractors, subcontractors on there, and equipment's just lying around. So how do we track and keep track of those assets on site? So that's one thing that, you know, that I'm seeing out there. And then of course, just advancing the safety features in our SRLs and our harnesses and lanyards to accommodate some of that new technology.
Yeah, I mean, we'll kind of just to follow up on Ryan's point, and I'm sure Patrick's doing something similar, but it's all about helping the customer out, keeping track of those assets. There's various ways you can do it. Simple spreadsheet with logging all that information in. There's software that's on the market that can be scannable by barcode, by RFID, who owns this piece of equipment, and so on. So it's kind of a value add that you know, most good safety distributors are offering their customers.
Definitely, we're seeing for the technology end of things, a lot of companies are pushing towards the idea of the smart worker, where they can identify a worker using various apps and be able to look at an app and tell that, yeah, that customer is using the right harness for the application he's doing right now. Yes, he's got the right respiratory protection. Yes, he's got the right gas detection. It's pretty interesting, some of the new technologies they're coming out with, different sensors they're putting in different equipment, things like that. 3M had, I think it's one of them has an SRL coming out that'll actually notify you via Bluetooth if an SRL has seen a fall. So there's some interesting products.
I want to talk about inspection and maintenance, especially in the age of COVID. What is the best practice nowadays, even in terms of cleaning? Maybe I'll turn to you, Rick.
Actually, there's a couple of manufacturers that have come out with some statements, and to be quite honest with you, I haven't read them yet in terms of cleaning. But I can tell you a lot of our large projects that are on the go right now initially came out with a budget to share harnesses. And if you've got, say, 500 guys on site, they were going to buy a couple of hundred harnesses and distribute them when needed. And that's quickly now changed to we need 500 harnesses. So they're not sharing the gear. As far as most contract, like large sites, big projects that are going on right now. And as I said, I haven't read some of the documents that are out in terms of how they're recommending disinfecting and so on, but I know that if it was for myself, I would appreciate my own harness in terms of COVID and so on.
I always like to use the analogy, at least on the soft goods side of things, that you got to treat your harness and lanyard like it's produce. If you leave it out and exposed to the elements, it's going to deteriorate faster. Whereas if you have a bag or storage for it, it's going to last you a lot longer and it's going to be better maintained. Too many times, you see equipment being left out and it rains overnight and it's been exposed and now there's rust or corrosion that's starting to happen on it. Sometimes it's unavoidable, especially in some of the applications that you're working in. It's dusty, it's dirty. Your harness and your lanyard are going to get dirty, but proper cleaning, proper storage after the fact will help the lifetime of that harness and lanyard. So,
yeah,
sure.
Patrick, are you going to say something?
Yeah, we have many customers who have come to us, giant warehouse operations where they have a small number of harnesses, like Rick is saying, being shared. And we've stressed that, no, you can't spray it with a harsh disinfectant to clean the harness between use. No, you can't use an alcohol solution to clean it. It's gentle, mild soap and water. Hang it to dry, treat it gently, never put it in a dryer, things such as that. In most cases, a lot of them have gone to buying a harness for each employee, like Rick was talking about. But in some cases, they still want to clean the product between users.
Yeah. On our, sorry. Go ahead, Rick.
I was just going to say, like, just generally speaking, in terms of inspection requirements and educating the customer, a lot of them aren't following. Most of them are good with understanding before each use inspection requirement for the piece of equipment, but a lot of them are not doing the proper 6-month to biannual detailed annual inspections, which is something that I know that we educate our customers every day on. Hey, by the way, are you keeping a log? Are you keeping all the records? Because there may come a day where there's an incident, and that's one of the things that they're going to want to do is look at that log to make sure that the equipment is being looked at least on an annual basis or more regularly, depending on the environment of the site.
Yeah, I was just going to go back to Patrick's point about cleaning it. A lot of our new harnesses that we're coming out with have removable padding for multiple reasons. Sometimes we get customers who want to be able to remove the padding in the summertime because it gets too hot when they're working outside. Others that just want to be able to remove the padding to wash it. So all of our padding on our new harnesses are removable and can be washed. So that's just another feature that we have on ours that we've taken into consideration. So
awesome, guys. We're nearing the end of our session. I'm wondering, I want to give each of you a chance to close. If there's something you haven't touched on that you think is important, just want to give each of you an opportunity, maybe beginning with Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to close out, all I would say is, get us involved when it comes to trying to determine what you need and the proper equipment. I'm available. I take care of all of Ontario, so give me a little bit of time. I can get to you, but if it's an on-site audit that you need, if it's a program, a drop tools program that you require, if you're unsure of your rescue plan and things like that, they're all things that I can help out with, and PSG as a company can help out with. So don't be afraid to get us involved, big or small, the opportunity or the application.
Sure. How about you, Patrick?
There are a ton of, like Ryan's saying, there's a ton of resources out there for you to get the information you need to do the job safely. Planning to a lot of Rick's points, doing your hazard assessments, do that, figure out what the hazard is, and then get someone like Ryan involved to help you address all those hazards. Have your guys working productively, or girls working productively and safely the whole time.
Yeah, and from my aspect, Marcel, is the value that good safety distributors bring is that education, and the message is we're here to help. Whether it's working at heights, whether it's inspections and training that we can give to the customer on how to inspect their gear and log it in, whether it's a simple talk during a safety day. Hey, here's the hazards of silica. Just awareness, right? To kind of bring that value. It goes a long way with workers, even hearing. If you thought about your hearing protectors, what happens if you don't protect yourself? So education, and good safety distributors do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for contributing to this discussion on fall protection. It's easy to see why it remains such an important issue in workplace safety. And if you'd like to learn more about fall protection, feel free to visit ohscanada.com. Thank you all.
Thank you, Marcel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very
Marcel.
much.